Welcome back to the Monte and Wolf Show. Joining us, in addition to me, Monte and Wolf, is dGon, LCK
Hello.
host extraordinaire.
There's a long pause there. I didn't know what you wanted to do, Monte.
I want you to take over for me on this show, dGon. Can you do that for me?
Can you be Monty?
Yeah,
Because it's the Monte and Wolf Show, so like you kind of have to be Monty.
There are a lot of shows where it's like name title of the people, and then someone fills in. And I'm that someone. I'm very happy to be that someone to cover the greatest league in the world. Boom.
That's right. So if you guys were not watching Summoning Insight or the Four Horsemen or anywhere else, well, where I've Power Spike or anywhere else where I've explained this, I just wanted to drop in here, obviously, as well. So we have this problem called suffering from success here at Last Free Nation, and what that means is I cannot watch 40 hours of League of Legends VODs a week and run this business anymore because we have too many business leads. We've got too much other stuff to do. We need to expand into other esports and general gaming. And what that means is I need to focus on the business side of things. If you guys missed it on Summoning Insight, we will be having the Four Horsemen more regularly now, which I will still be a part of. So I'm still going to be a part of shows like Four Horsemen, Foreplay, Nerd Legion, and then we're going to start up some new shows that I'm on as well. The problem is really that to be an expert in global League of Legends, it takes a lot of my time. And on top of it taking a lot of my time, it also takes the wrong time, which is I basically, because of not, it's really this show's fault when you think about it. We record this show on Monday mornings because we need to get stuff out during the break in LCK every week. And what that means is I have to spend my Sundays streaming and Sunday nights watching the LCK live because there's no time basically to catch up on that on Mondays. And so that means that I make my wife very angry because I do not help take care of my children on the weekends. And also, I would like to see my children on the weekends.
There we go. All right. I was going to say, Father of the Year, MonteCristo right here.
So there are several reasons. And people are like, well, why can't you just do Monte and Wolf Show and follow the LCK? The problem is, as these guys will tell you from being on the LCK broadcast, that is not a small undertaking.
It's 5 days a week, 2 best of threes a day.
Yeah, exactly. And it's kind of like one of those things where it's in for a penny, in for a pound, where if I watch 40 hours of League of Legends a week, then I can do all these shows, right? And it's only like, here's an extra hour, here's an extra 2 hours to the 40 hours. So it doesn't make that big of a difference. But watching a bunch of League of Legends just for one show is, frankly, a horrendous use of my time. And the other reason is, here's the other thing people say, well, Monte, why can't you just do the shows and hire someone else to run the business of LFN? Well, the problem with that is I am literally the only person in the world who knows how to run a podcast business and knows esports at the same time. So I'm not really replaceable. And more crucially, guys, I'm the only one who will do this for almost no money. So if you guys have a CEO who knows the podcast business, who will do it for almost no money, you can send them my way. And then maybe I'll come back to League of Legends. And also knows esports.
That's right. Monte picked the cheaper option. So yeah.
So really the question is of value, guys. So we're gonna figure out what the Monte and Wolf Show will not be changing names, by the way, not this year at the very least. So congratulations, you get to be Monte dGon. And you know what? We may add more hosts to the show. We're just going to see how it rolls. So if you guys have feedback, please leave it in the comments below. I will also probably pop on the show from time to time for funsies. Yes. So I'm not going to, just like in Summoning Insight, I am going to come back. We moved a lot of the industry talk from Summoning Insight over to Four Horsemen. So if you guys want the Riot slander, we are housing all of our nuclear waste in that show now to avoid it spilling over and tainting my esteemed colleagues who may have to have professional relationships with Riot Games and other developers.
Yeah, Yamato.
Yeah, exactly. So we have now sealed the toxicity within the Four Horsemen. So if you guys want to go enter the toxic chamber, that's where it is. I know many of you love that. including the fact that I showed how LEC is actually view-botting their own YouTube channel for inexplicable reasons, and conversations about how the TikTok ban might mean Riot has to sell, probably to the Saudi government. So there are many fun things that you can find on the latest episode of the Four Horsemen. However, these shows shall be for talk about the games that will get nobody in trouble.
I also want to chime in that obviously like dGon and Monte don't really have the same personality, so the vibe of the show will definitely change a little bit.
Sure.
And so as a result, if you guys want us to be a little bit more aggro or go a little bit more in on the players, or try to emulate some of the things that will probably be missing initially from this show, then like obviously feel free to give us that feedback, in some of the official channels, the Last Free Nation Discord, on the YouTube comments, or anywhere where these podcasts are uploaded. Because it is kind of going to be a big change for us, right? Obviously, the Monte Wolf Show has it in the name, and he won't be here, so the vibe is definitely going to be very different with dGon, but he's obviously done a ton of Last Free Nation podcast hosts, or hosting for a lot of different podcasts here, so he's very experienced. That's why we chose him. That's why we're really happy to have him on the show and have him as Monte's replacement. He's obviously very familiar with the LCK as well, because he works on it with us every week, so...
I also think you guys had some really cool ideas for kind of bringing in Korean fan or Korean community sentiment into the show, and like seeing how that lines up with Western fan sentiment or your guys' opinions. Because to me, that's one of the most interesting things, is like oftentimes the Korean fans have very, very different kind of widely held opinions about who's good, who's overperforming or underperforming than the Western community. I think that's going to be a really interesting talking point for you guys.
Yeah, and I've had multiple shows where I've stayed the same role as a host and have had new people come on in, and that feedback is going to be very important. I'll be very open and receptive to it, and surprisingly, range, I can do than just be more than just the good guy. Like, we got to flame a person. I might call him subpar or a thing or two. I can get in there and hurt their feeling. I can do it.
dGon's going to take over Flaming Pays for me, so thank you.
Oh yeah,
he's a dirty LPL janitor now.
Yeah. Head on over there to JDG and be Ruler Jr.
I just want to check in. Did we think that Ruler was an upgrade over Pays? Because, Ruler has big main character energy, and Pays is just an NPC janitor. And, I saw some of these games. Now, I didn't watch all the games this week.
Did you watch him teleport into the team fight after it was over and die?
That one was bad.
I'm just saying, he's the guy who gets the shit done. He has main character energy that Pays has never had in his entire life.
This is true, and if you're plugged into the Korean YouTube, TikTok, Instagram algorithm, you would know what the Korean fans think, which we will talk about later in the show, because I sat there and watched them all and then used Google Translate and translated everything. I'm plugged in.
dGon's here. All right, guys. So we also do have a fancy new sponsor this week for the Monte and Wolf Show. Life's good here at Last Free Nation, and it can be good for you. And our sponsor is going to be an app. Actually, this is our first app sponsorship, guys, and it's going to be Upside. And you might be wondering what Upside is. I actually used this when I was back in the States, and it is super cool. So what Upside is, it's very well-known app, very well reviewed. If you guys look at the app stores, you guys can go download it either on Android or on iOS. And effectively what it does is it has over 100,000 gas stations, grocery stores, and restaurants on the app. So it uses your location to show you deals that are around you from gas station, grocery stores, and restaurants. And what it does is it gives you cash back. And it works super well. So what you do is with Upside, you look and you say, okay, here's this gas station near me. They're offering a discount per gallon of gas, for example. You add your credit card to the app. Then what you do is you go to the gas station, fill up your tank with gas if you're in America. You press the claim button, so you will claim the offer, and then it will scan your credit card transactions to find that credit card transaction. And then in the app, it will give you that cash back, which you can then transfer into your bank account. So it's incredibly useful if you're getting gas. Here's a tip, guys. If you work for a company, you have a corporate card, I would use this. I would use this if I were you. And yeah, it just gives you better deals on stuff you're probably going to be purchasing anyway. And if you guys are wondering, well, how do they make money? Is it data? Are they selling my data? No, it's affiliates. So they create affiliates with these businesses. And so that's how Upside makes money. So you don't have to worry about that. And you guys can download the free Upside app and use promo code Monte to get an extra 25 cents back for every gallon on your first tank of gas, which is a crazy good deal. That's an extra 25 cents back for every gallon on your first tank of gas using promo code Monte. So it's a sick app. You're going to be buying this stuff anyway. It will give you very meaningful discounts, which then you can just transfer from the Upside app back into your bank account for cash back. So
it's
very
not
cool.
Just gas as well. Obviously, groceries and some stuff, you can check it out. And if you do live in the United States, as I'm reminded by every time I visit the United States, you have to drive everywhere. That's how it works. So as it turns out, it's going to be pretty useful for you, pretty much no matter where you are.
Right, and it might be a restaurant near you that you actually like. That one of your favorite restaurants might be on the Upside app, and you can get a discount there as well. So there's a lot to like. I would just check out the app if I were you. Get some gas discounts from our code Monte. But it is very cool. It's very well reviewed. You guys can look it up. Totally legit. I had a very easy time using it myself. I got some pretty sweet discounts. So thank you to Upside. Really appreciate you. And we try and give you guys sponsors that we think will be good for you, that you will enjoy, and that you will use. And Upside is one of those. So with that said, I am now going to vanish because I haven't seen all the games from this last week, and let dGon and Wolf talk about the rest of the show.
Thanks, Monte.
Bye. All right. I'm not Monte. I'm dGon here on the Monte and Wolf Show, joined by Wolf now for the first time. I'm nervous, Wolf. This is exciting. These are big shoes to fill, and we had big changes in this year in the LCK. Obviously, the Group Baron, Group Elder, that doesn't include the patch, which had Otacon, 2 versions, but only one that we get to see now. The boots, the feats of strength. Yeah.
So you and I naively predicted that maybe we'd see 2 of the ruinous Otacons in this week of LCK. And I just thought, I played a ton of solo queue. Solo queue's super bloody, right? There's a lot of damage that happens early in the game. And it's happened to me rarely, but it has happened to me a few times. So I just thought, okay, well, it's LCK. I saw the opening matches that we had, obviously, the kickoff tournament, and there was a lot of action in those games. So I kind of figured, it could be crazy, it could be chaotic in this first week. Teams don't know what's going on. I didn't know exactly how it's calculated. I mean, I knew it was calculated at 14 minutes, but I didn't know, okay, how many kills do we really need? And in retrospect, I should have been very wise to the fact that there would be 0 chance that we would actually see it. And that held true. We had 0, not even a single one of the ruinous Otacons in this first week of the LCK. And that's kind of one thing I feel about this patch, one of many things I should say I feel about this patch being kind of unfinished. I feel like this patch wasn't really fully thought out about how it would affect the pro scene by Riot. And so this one didn't quite hit the mark.
Yeah, quite frankly, I don't think this patch was really fully thought out across multiple different platforms, because on Reddit, a lot of the crying was about, the blue essence and opening chests and the different currencies that you can get in the game, and that wasn't fully polished. It was you'd have to play 7.5 years to unlock all the champions in League of Legends, and it's not that that's important to the pro scene, but I think it's kind of important to show the shift in Riot's mentality in terms of how they're releasing things, which is, let's take these good ideas and get most of it in there, and then we can, use the patch system to polish it on up. And across multiple different facets, this patch wasn't the cleanest that we had seen, but also it came out with some huge ideas and huge changes that generally people liked. I think the idea of Otacon, this cool moment of 5 people getting a revive and bombing down mid lane, or bombing down wherever to make plays happen, is a cool visual, and it is exciting to us that have seen it now. There's been 24 games played in the LCK, 24 times. It is a little annoying, and it does take away from a lot of the cerebral aspect of the game.
Yeah.
It does feel a little zug, but it's just showing what the ethos of, I think, what Riot is moving towards
Sure.
now.
I mean, I think there's a lot of different ways to look at how Riot is changing the game, but I think ultimately what their goal is to promote action kind of nonstop. And for people like me and for Monte and for a lot of analysts out there, it's not as enjoyable to watch people just like 5-man bomb dive a mid inhibitor turret.
Hey, I'm still here. I'm still here, guys. I'm still here, and I do think it's too zug. I do think it's too zug. I don't like just we walk from one fight to the next fight.
Yeah,
that's what Riot wants for solo queue. Boo.
I love
macro.
when Monte's here and he could just speak from the void into these shows. It's great.
Yeah.
But like seriously though, it got zug, but it's just so much like when I'm casting, we have the new overlay, right? So it shows you the feats of strength at the top. So there's the 3 different objectives you can get to get 1 feat of strength. There's the first blood one, and then there's the first turret one. So there's a lot to keep track of there while you're casting. And because grubs are now more important, they're already super important. Teams aren't necessarily focusing on the dragon. We haven't seen that many trades. It's just like fight for first grubs, maybe fight for a little bit of vision on dragon. Oh, it's too hard because we got to get the next scrub thing because 6 grubs are super strong. And if you get Otacon later, you get that first turret, by the way, which is really important. You're going to get feats of strength, so you can buy tier 3 boots later. There's all these really important things happening in the early game. So teams are just not sure how to trade objectives very well in the LCK yet. They're not sure how to play macro. Maybe macro just isn't viable to where you just decide to side lane. Because we've seen a few teams try to just avoid going for these grub fights and trying to get some turret plates on like an Ambessa in the bottom lane is like, well, I'll get a few plates. It just hasn't really been working out. And so it just creates this meta where teams feel priced into fighting because they're grouping for these objectives, and how objective fights work in League of Legends and how they have basically for all time, especially in the last few years where CC has been so important. If you're not in the better position in these early fights, especially when not even everyone in the game has their ultimate online, when you group up on, like, let's say grubs, if you walk all the way there, you feel priced into the fight. You can't just be like, well, we can't get in, I guess we'll leave, because then you lose the grubs and you also lost a cross map. But if you're not in a position to set up and engage, you default lose the fight basically no matter what every time. And so teams are just like being like, fuck it, maybe we'll get lucky. And then they go in, they lose the fight. And I'm like, oh, it's another one-sided game of the LCK. Oh, no.
Yeah, we've had so many of them so far in week number 1. I'm just surprised we don't see the one grub steal and leave move anymore. No one's doing that. It is, hey, let's fight them here at grubs and wipe them. And partially because first blood hasn't happened until that grub fight. But even then, I'm just so stunned that we just don't see the one steal. And okay, no one gets the little the checkbox for the feat of strength, the objective feat of strength portion where you need to get 3 major objectives. So if you just steal one of those away, okay, cool, we're good. You can have the 2, and that's fine. It just feels like the junglers have gone mad and just lead their team into death as they try to aggress into the area.
It's crazy because obviously everyone's known this since Scrubs have been out, but like I feel like teams are just hyper indexed into fighting to get at least the extra one, because you only have 2 smites, right? Both, like, each jungler has 1 smite. So in order to secure 2 out of 3, you have to get one without smiting, basically, right? You have to kill the first one, then you could smite the second one, but then you still have to fight for the third one. Or, if your smite comes back up, which can happen, it's rare, then you could smite it away, right? But overall, we're seeing a lot of teams show up, try to rush that first one down without using smite before the enemy jungler shows up, then smite the second one, and then win the team fight to get the third one. And, like, if you're first on the play, then you have that inherent advantage. You already got the first one. You're already in position. Your team's likely there. But it's the teams that are like, I can win this. We can get that third one. We can deny it when they're slow to turn up, that we've seen so many times, especially from our weaker teams in the LCK, where you just go in and, like, I saw Pioshik walk up and try to get it and die. And I'm like, okay, you got it. You got 1 grub, but they got a ton of money. They already had 2. Like, what are you doing? And it ends up being like just kind of a disaster. So I want to see teams figure out how to, like, utilize Dragon again, and try to just trade objective and try to play the map a little bit more. Because in the LCK this week, it has just been no brain caveman fight for the most part.
The other big change that came through that you can tell but I don't think it's massive. It's the turret damage, the early turret damage, and how fast it starts to heat up. It does feel like like life is still hell for top laners because they still are getting dove. But we've also seen top laners punish much harder when teams mess up the dive. I'm thinking of the very early GenG Hanwha Life match where Zeus just punished under the tower because I think they messed up the dive, Duro messed up the dive, something like that. So how effective has that been in your eyes to change how things have gone?
I think we've seen dives be a little bit more, you have to really know exactly how to turret aggro juggle and how you need to set it up. Like, it's a lot more punishing and it's a lot more complicated. But the LCK was already so good at that, especially these early top dives, like when you have lane swaps, so you have the two top laners sitting under turret. It's really easy to just path up there and guarantee that. And unless you want to try to block the jungler out, which is jungle matchup dependent, like, because you could also just like go shadow your top laner and be like, okay, I'm gonna block them from going, but if they're not there and they go steal your camps away, then you're doomed. So you kind of just end up opting into like, all right, we're both gonna try to race to kill the top laner first, which is, both teams are so good at this. In the LCK in general, all of our teams are good at setting up these dives and making sure the support grabs the aggro first, or if it's like a Sejuani jungle, they can go and flash for the knock-up and then they can do it. It doesn't matter. Setting up the aggro means that you should be able to get everybody out and still kill the top laner in most cases. Even like a K'Sante isn't safe because the players who are pushing the lane are also chunking the K'Sante out nonstop. So it's not like the K'Sante is at full health when this happens in most cases. Yeah. It doesn't feel like the ramping turret damage and the increased turret damage is really affecting this scenario. But if we have normal lanes, for example, we're trying to set up dives on a 2v2 lane, it feels a lot better there because you have a support to defend. The AD carry can move around and add a lot of damage. So it feels much better in those types of normal lane scenarios. The problem is that Riot still hasn't been able to figure out how to get people to not lane swap to avoid bad AD carry matchups because there are just so many of them at this moment in time. And some of the meta picks that like they nerfed, like Varus, Kalista, and Ashe still are incredibly strong early game. So the LCK still is trying to figure out, I think, the best way to basically get value out of these lane swaps. But what happens now is it's a race for that first dive because it's first blood. You didn't get a kill at level 1. Okay, we're gonna kill the top laner. Feats of strength online, and if you get it first, even if it's by like 2 seconds, too bad. I got it first. We got first blood.
Yeah, we saw that happen a couple times. It's just that early aggression, the Kalista like lifestyle of just win lane, win game has been super important with the lane swaps. It's nullifying a lot of the traditional bot lane matchups and just head-to-head top lane matchups, which has led to all these dives, which has led to top lane being pretty crap. Last change, just because it's I guess it's not a patch change. You've clamored for this. We've got new music in the LCK.
Yeah.
No longer the champ select dun 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 dun. It's no longer that. We've got a whole wide range of music. What would you describe the music as?
LCK kind of announced they're going to change the music every few years. I think every 2 years. And so it's been 2 years of that last music that we had, and it's changed. And I don't know yet. I haven't had confirmed to me personally whether this is going to be just for LCK Cup, this music, or then we'll also have different LCK music. But considering how difficult it is to set up new music and set up all this stuff, it's probably just for the year. It's probably going to be the same music. I'm someone who really cares about draft music, and I think it's very important. And I've been in leagues, where draft music is horrible or like non-existent. They just use the in-game like stuff, and I'm like, no. But this one is pretty good. I'm glad for a change up. Just simply because the music that we had, which I really liked at the LCK, we've had just for so long that it's nice to have a change. We have that special Game 5 music and different draft music for the finals and stuff like that. That feels really special. But even for regular season, it was time for a change, so I'm into that. There's a bit of a vibe going on that's like, I don't know, it's a little bit of classical music almost in some of the stuff that we're doing, which is a little bit weird because that doesn't really fit the vibe of LCK to me. We had like the glory, hallelujah thing when like Peanut did the walkout for like Team Jungle, and I was kind of like, I don't think they know what this is, but okay.
that was USA. The Battle Hymn of the Republic is what it's called, and that one's if you search it, I think the first thing that comes up is like the U.S. Army choir sings the Battle Hymn of the Republic at some like military event. And Peanut's like, yeah, I want that one.
I don't think Peanut chose that one. That was just I think that was kind of a miss. Sometimes we have a miss at the LCK. That one was a miss, but it's okay. But yeah, I'm overall happy with talking about the patch because this ties in. Like the Noxus theme, for me, it's a little bit hashtag ad, but that's okay because that's the whole point of this tournament, right? From Riot's perspective, is to try to like get people to buy the in-game stuff. But I feel like it's done pretty tastefully. I like the way that the gradients and the backgrounds look for a lot of our graphics. We're not just doing the normal LCK with like a little bit of bright, vibrant colors, but it's kind of the same fonts, the same thing. It looks very different. It feels very cool. And if we get to do this like, 2 more times this year where we completely change things up, hopefully the patch will be a little bit figured out. But if we do like a big overarching theme change at the LCK 2 more times this year, when the patch does take over and we go, okay, we're no longer Noxus, we're Demacia or whatever, then I'll be hyped for that, because that also kind of forces the LCK to change things up, because before we were kind of like, man, I've seen this standings graphic for like the last 5-6 years, it really hasn't changed, and now it's kind of slowly moving into a different direction, so I'm very happy for that.
I will say, when I sign off the show and then the outro music plays, very different kind of feeling. I didn't realize how attached I was to our old song and what it meant, because it would change if it was a game 5. Though our sign off music would change if it was game 5. Now it feels very what was I calling it? I think it was Proximity or Suicide Sheep. It's like early 2010s EDM. It's like this light, bubbly EDM kind of sign-off music. I think we can try to find something there. Hopefully, they're cooking something up there.
There's like the song that's the new closing song. I don't know what version of it is. I think it's even sung in English, actually. I don't know, but there's a really famous song that it might not even be originally Korean, but is famous in Korea, called Ave Maria. And you could look up like Ave Maria Korean song. It's like YouTube it and find it. And it's that song, but I think with a guy singing it in English. The song I'm thinking of is sung by a woman. But anyway, when it gets to the part where they sing the Ave Maria chorus, the words just stop, and then it like kind of like shows the rest of the highlights and then ends. So it feels like such a buzzkill for me, because I'm like, I know this song. Yes, it's the part. Here we go. Oh, it's not there. They didn't do the Ave Maria part. Like, so I don't know. It's a very weird vibe for me, because I think it's a song that every Korean will recognize. Like, oh, here we go. I know it. Oh, we didn't get it. Like, it's very strange, but like I think it suits the vibe of the LCK, so I'm okay with it.
All right. Well, before we start talking about some of the upsets that happened this week, if you wanted to listen to the new music of the LCK or anything in general while doing something else at the same time, we've got something for you here. It is our friends over at Turtle Beach with their new headset, the Stealth 700. Boom. Where is it? Yeah. Thank you, Turtle Beach. Pow. We use all the products here over at Power Spike at Last Free Nation. And want to make sure that we get them to you. One of the coolest things about the new headset over with Turtle Beach, the Stealth 700, is that you can have multiple inputs at the same time using their double wireless transmitter system. That means you can seamlessly switch between your consoles and PC with just a click of a button, and it gets even better while being connected to your console. The Stealth 700 can also connect to your phone for music streaming, taking calls, all at the same time. So imagine listening to the Ave Maria version that the LCK has, and also actual Ave Maria, and then just sync it up and hear it together.
So the cool thing too is you can actually adjust the volume on the headset itself, so you've kind of got your own like physical mixer, which is really nice. And I think there's been like a big call for a lot of headsets, and a lot of devices just in general these days have their own proprietary software, and then you have to do like all this stuff and have it open on your computer to keep things tweaked and moving around. But the fact that you have that on the headset itself is actually super nice, and allows you to adjust it on the fly, which is really cool. Just having physical buttons and not having to flip through a bunch of stuff can be super helpful. And the fact that you can, like, if you're trying to play on a console that has the Bluetooth functionality built in but doesn't have a music player on it, then boom, you've got your phone connected to the same headset, and now you have a music player on your console. So it's super handy. Like if your console has like the streaming service on it, but like you don't have it, but you have some physical MP3 files on your phone, you could listen to those. So it really just puts you fully in control. If you use the headset, you can turn anything that you're listening to wirelessly into like a media player as well.
Yeah, again, so thanks to our friends over at Turtle Beach for hooking us up with the Stealth 700. And if you want to try this one out for the Stealth 700, we got a little code for you so that you can save 10% off your entire order at Turtle Beach using the code Monte Wolf. That is, use the code Monte Wolf at turtlebeach.com. Stay warm, level up your game with 10% off at turtlebeach.com using promo code Monte Wolf. New year, new gaming gear. Thanks to our friends over at Turtle Beach. All right. First ad read done, dusted, did okay. Nothing blew up. This is exciting. Time to go to the LCK season that has happened so far here, Wolf. We have this new system, right? The Baron Elder system, where they took 1 and 4 and 5, and then I think it's 9, 10 against 2, 3,
well,
6. That's basically how it worked out.
Basically how it worked
draft,
out.
But
Yeah, there was a draft. So like Hanwha and GenG were in the finals of last year's LCK Summer, so they ended up being the captains of the teams. And then they got to pick basically the first team they wanted, but then the next team picked the team that they wanted of the available teams. So it wasn't like Hanwha picked all of the teams. The next team in line picks the next team, which picks the next team, which I can't even remember off the top of my head like exactly how that order went out. I know T1 was picked early, for example, obviously. And that was kind of how it shook out. And then we have two groups that will get advantages based on which group wins. But ultimately, you're still competing within your own group in order to get the highest possible seed going into playoffs or play-ins if you don't make it to the playoffs directly because your group didn't win. It's kind of a weird format, but like what I like about this tournament and what we've talked about on this show before, we've talked about on Pogstate before, is that like there's a bunch of like crazy, wacky, and wild changes. The patch is stupid, like nobody has it figured out yet. People want Fearless, but like, do the pros really want Fearless at the highest level? Probably not. So this tournament allows you to like test everything and smash everything into this one wild and wacky fun tournament that doesn't affect your LCK record really officially. So you end up with like a really cool test tournament, almost like what the Kespa Cup has been in the past, what like Demacia Cup has ended up looking like in the past. So now the LCK has like this big official one with the real LCK rosters playing it, not just like some challenger teams or half LCK rosters. It's like the real one. So I like this tournament as a concept. And unfortunately, though, the format has led to, in this case, like a very one-sided set of wins. And one draft was stronger than the other one, and in challengers, it's even worse. But like so far in this tournament, it's very obvious that Elder is going to win. It's basically, unless we have some crazy upsets, pretty doomed. And so like, I don't even want to think about the format that much because ultimately you're still going to go through a playoff bracket. Ultimately, you're still competing against the teams in your group, and ultimately the best teams will win. So that's kind of how I look at it. Like everyone's like, "What if Team Baron doesn't win?" I'm like, "Well, then like they were worse, and like they won't go, and it's fine."
Well, I think that the idea was that you have all these fans from other teams supporting other teams within their group. So that was the goal. Right? Hanwha Live fans supporting T1 fans, and more importantly, like T1 fans supporting like Bro fans or B&K FearX fans because that fan base is so massive. However, I don't think we did a great job. The LCK did a great job explaining this to fans because I don't even know if they had an understanding of like the group system. I think the fans just show up, cheered for their own team, and when they won, it was great. When they lost, they didn't. I don't think they know the ramifications of being a first place Hanwha Life squad in Group Baron, and then they don't make it straight into playoffs or something like that. I feel like that hasn't manifested yet, and I'm hoping that it will later on, like
People will know.
like week 3.
People will know when play-ins happen because they're gonna be like, "Wait a minute, why is my team in play-ins?"
No, before play-ins though. It should be happening. Like I want to see
Sure.
T1 fans in the crowd cheering for my bros. I want to see like these like the fandom translate, and it hasn't yet.
I think Korean LCK fans are pretty smart. Like I think they probably figured it out for the most part. They just don't necessarily want to support their rival teams yet.
Still?
But I think the global fans are not as smart, and they'll take a little bit longer to figure it out in terms of the format. But like to be fair, they've been watching. Some of them have been watching LCK for years and years and years, even back. Some of them as far back as Champions. And so it's a new format that we have this year, and so they're gonna, if they haven't really been, super logged in and plugged in and like checking Leaguepedia and looking for the official riot announcement, they might be like, wait, what? And they might like tune in and see the LCK channel is live and be like, or they just might think it's regular LCK like spring season game. They don't even know, at first. So I think once we get to play-ins and once we see the first LCK Cup champion crown, everyone talks about, everyone kind of adjusts to it. People will start to realize like, oh, I'm really excited about the draft next year because I kind of understand it now. Because this was announced very late. There wasn't a whole lot of like information about this cup and how it was going to work for most people, especially on the global side, until very recently. And people just kind of assumed things would be the same because that's how it's been forever. So I think there's still like some, people will tune in next year with a lot more expectations and excitement than they do this year. So I get what you're saying, where it's like, I wish we could have, T1 fans and Hama fans cheering together. That may never happen, by the way, especially with what happened in the playoffs last season and what happened with Zayas and Doran. But like, I see like where you're coming from, like you're like, maybe they can get along. I'm like, probably not in Low Park, but
it felt like they were forced together by Father LCK being like, you guys have to cheer for each other now. I don't care what happened in the offseason. I don't care who Zeus's agent is. Like, be friends if you want to make it out. Like, speaking of the format, though, just last portion, the bottom 2 teams from the winning group and the top 4 teams from the losing group create a 16 play-in bracket, and 1 team will get dropped, probably my bros, maybe BNK FearX. But it says, like, this is where I'm a little confused. Who is the top seed for play-ins? Is it the bottom 2 teams from the winning group, or is it whoever has the most wins and then they'll seed it that way? I think it's that way.
I assume it. Actually, I would assume it would be the other way.
Really? You think like DRX and Nongshim are going to be a higher seed than T1 and Hanwha?
They shouldn't be, but if we're really trying to value like the group versus group, like if that's like what we're trying to value, like as a tournament structure, like it would probably be the other way. But I actually don't know the answer to that question.
Right.
Right. We'll get that answered probably on Wednesday, but yeah, we'll look into that one for you guys. But either way, to me, like I don't know. I'm the kind of guy who's like, I want to see the best League of Legends possible no matter what. So I know the format, to me, what it means is like these teams will encounter these teams, and that's like where like the format like interest stops for me. I'm not like, but like Team Baron, I hope they can get a comeback. I'm like, we'll see what happens. Like I want to see the best League of Legends possible, and like we'll see which teams collide and like how that lines up and which team is better. Then we get to the playoffs. I'm like, cool, now we got best of 5s. So like, who ends if Bro gets eliminated or whether that's Nongshim gets eliminated, I'm like like they didn't win, like goodbye, like we'll see, try again in LCK.
I was bringing that up the other day when the Bros lost to Nongshim 2-0, and that was the last chance for a win, because they then play GenG, Dplus, and KT. And then they close out their Cuspa Cup or the LCK Cup. They won't play again until April. That means this team will have 4 months of losing until they have another opportunity to win. And we don't even know what that schedule's like. Maybe they just play all the tough teams at the start and they won't find a win until like May or something.
Yeah. So let's talk about the upsets that we had this week. So everyone in our talent group did predictions for week 1, which week 1 is always the toughest predictions because you never know like really where people are at, but you can have a pretty good idea about what's going on, especially with a pretty good idea about a team that played completely together in a tournament that happened very recently, where they in fact then lifted a trophy and beat teams like Dplus, who are one of the best teams in our tournament right now, who had a full roster and beat like half of GenG and looked really well coordinated together, had some solid drafting, and then they come into the LCK. I'm talking about Bro. And then they almost beat DRX, but actually lose to DRX with an emergency sub and then get absolutely blasted by Nongshim a few days later. And the bro hype is dead, dGon. They're not good, I guess. I guess we were completely wrong. I guess the hype was fake. And then hype, speaking of, wasn't even playing. They put Bull in. I mean, there's rumors that hype is actually sick. A lot of people have the flu. That's like why Teddy isn't playing. By the way, Teddy so sick that like he was in the hospital and needed to have like an IV hooked up, and the flu is really bad right now in Korea. Like a lot of people are getting it. A lot of people are getting sick. Luckily for us, knock on wood, no one in our talent group has really been affected by it too much just yet.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's why Teddy wasn't playing, and that's possibly why. I mean, that's the rumor has it why hype wasn't playing. But yeah, I hope he returns because without him,
lazy feel.
I mean, look.
Because Teddy's on DRX. Teddy and Lazy Feel.
Yeah, no, I'm saying, but like hype wasn't there and Bull.
Got it.
So both scenarios, so like they played against each other, right? But
yeah,
with hype gone, Bull was playing. I want to see hype back. Teddy will be back likely next week as well.
I don't know. I mean, Coach Edgar has been known to run those multi-man rosters, and who's your AD carry this week? Who's your support this week? I feel like they were jostling for position, and I have nightmares now of Bull on Ezreal just completely whiffing every single mystic shot as Jiwoo walked up to him and missed every Ashe arrow. It was the battle of the worst AD carries in the league, and that's my bulldozer right there. But it didn't matter. He could not find the blind side of a barn, dude.
It's crazy too because Jiwoo is a player who looked like he was like the best part of a really really bad roster.
Yeah.
And now that the roster's upgraded, like.
He doesn't look as good.
He doesn't look as good, but like, yeah, I think we're all kind of learned that because a lot of people are like, "Yo, put this guy on Dplus and like he'll be the best," and like we kind of know that's not true anymore. Actually, let's be realistic. But I think he's still a very talented player, and I think he's got a lot of potential growth that he'll have over the course of this year. And it's still early days, but I've been pretty disappointed with like Bro with their Kespa Cup results and how clean they look there. Nongshim with a pretty upgraded roster, still not looking really very great at all. And then KT and BNK, or BFX, whatever you want to call them, they're Trico's BFX, but they're still called BNK. It's a whole thing. I'm not going to get into it.
That's the thing.
Brand correctly, please brand correctly, teams. If I were a sponsor, and my name of my sponsor was a 3-letter thing, like. My main sponsor, my title sponsor is 3 letters. If I were the sponsor, I'd probably be like, let's put that right in the Tricode because it's a title sponsor. Kind of like Hanwha Life Esports, HLE, kind of like SK Telecom, SKT, kind of iconic. Anyway, I'm just saying, they came in with probably the weakest roster.
Yeah.
And took a game off KT and almost beat GenG in game 1. I don't know really where I put this team right now because Diablo is a psychopath. Yeah. Like he is actually just like, I'm going in, it doesn't matter. And like he looks like one of those guys that has like an unlimited ceiling. Like his ceiling seems so incredibly high. If he can figure out when to go in and like when and how to be a little bit more measured with that type of aggression, and how young he is, he's 17 years old as well, just like Lazyfield is a very new player. Then I mean, this guy's limits are we might not know them for a while, but sometimes going all in and going a little bit crazy can backfire. So, this team is very much a team that has an aggressive mid laner, has a very aggressive bot laner, and will need to figure out how they're going to play together and try to win objective fights and set up CC correctly. Clear seems like he's a little bit off on the deep end right now, and he's been kind of like that for a while. And yet this team punished GenG, so I think it's good. It's good that like our worst LCK team on paper can still actually maybe beat our best LCK team if the best LCK team is playing badly. That was exciting to see.
Yeah,
it win though.
Well, surprisingly, it felt like a lot of that was driven by the engages that Kellen was finding. A lot of fights in the jungle where Canyon was kind of farming when he didn't have priority within River, and the team just collapsed on him and punished. So you could see what Kellen brings to this team. Surprisingly, knowing for people that don't know Kellen other than last year, he just gets dropped from Dplus Kia for Moham and wasn't the right fit. Moham was the engage guy. Kellen was the enchanter guy. He made all these plays on Alistair this week. It's like, okay, this team has parts. They've got talent. You've got the crazy AD carry that wants to be a stud and his ceiling is high, but now they've got to learn how to win. And we got to see a team take a great learning lesson on how to take defeat from the jaws of victory, and that'll hopefully get them a step closer to learning how to win later on in that game number 1 against GenG. And even in game 2, they were finding a lot of good fights against GenG, but GenG plays the map, they get more gold, eventually they squeeze them out, and easy 2-0, nothing to see here for GenG. But a team, we're going back to like Jiwoo not being able to step up as the team got better around him. I think a player that did step up and lead that upset at the beginning of the season for GenG was Duro. How do you feel like Duro has played so far as GenG were able to take down Hanwha Life Esports in the epic clash from last year's summer finals?
Duro is very confident, and that's always kind of been the case with him. If you go back to like watching him in Challengers so long ago, when we cast him years ago, and then we've been co-streaming and watching him and stuff. He's very confident when he first played in the LCK. When he was a FearX like sub player who got called up, he was like, I want to be the carrier of Challengers. I want to be the best support player. I think I'm basically, capable of doing that. But he was also very respectful and being like, I'm still new, but I think I have it in me to be one of the best. And you could see it in his gameplay. And he, unlike a lot of support players who get in this weird situation where they're filling big shoes, he hasn't really choked yet. Like, he's made some errors, right? We've seen some overextensions, especially in that BNK series, but I think he's really empowered by the fact that Ruler is confident, right? They have such a star-studded lineup. You have, Keen, Chovy, and Canyon on this lineup. And so when they're telling you what to do and you're already like sharing information with them and you're already like, oh wow, this, all the teams I played on, I've been a big shot caller. I've been a big engage tool. I've been the one who sets up a lot of fights. And then you have players like Chovy, shouting out a bunch of information and telling you where to go. And you're already like, you feel like you're super plugged in. You're probably like, damn, this is the best day of my life. Because I used to play on a really weak team. I used to play on a Challengers team. They had to play for FearX last season. They were pretty weak when I tried to fix it, but obviously I couldn't. And then you show up to this roster and you're like, oh my God, I'm playing on the big boy team now. It must feel really liberating. It's probably what Delight felt, when he also was in this situation, moving from Bro to an amazing team like this. So I'm excited to see where he's going to go, because we have seen supports crumble in this position under so much pressure, with a lot of egos, with a lot of experienced veterans, and not live up to what they should be living up to. And I think Duro so far has really hit the mark for me. And I think he will, like Delight, if he continues to play as well as he did this week, for the most part, end up with like a really strong reputation. Even if he doesn't stay on this roster in the future, people will be like, oh, this guy's a top tier elite support.
Yeah. It's funny because this is one of the pieces of content that popped up at the end of the week when I was scrolling through my YouTube shorts and Instagram. The vibe that Ruler provides is so much more confident that everyone else is big jokey feels. So GenG put out their behind the scenes content of their week 1 matches, and he's like saying like, man, I really just want to slap something. And then everyone got a little nervous and he goes, something with a big surface. And Coach Kim's like, he starts cursing because he's like, well, Coach Kim is kind of like a big guy and everyone else on that team's pretty like skinny and stickly. And then he's Coach Kim's like, I'm going to go have a banana milk. And then Chovy says something like, Coach, are you sure you want a banana milk? And he's like, yeah, I'm going to die early. It doesn't matter. And then Keen goes, can you give me your money then when you die? And then Chovy's like, can I get the house? And he goes, fuck it. All right, I've decided I'm going to live for a little while. And it all starts because Ruler's in there making these jokes, making these the mood lighter, but not in a way that we think maybe Lehens could have done. Lehens does it like poking fun at people, but Ruler has this presence.
It's also like a light humor that's quite dark as well, in a way that only like Ruler could do. there's been a lot of players I've watched over the years kind of grow into their like from being like a pretty young player who's very talented to being like, okay, I've won some stuff, I've accomplished some stuff. Now I'm kind of like, I'm super confident in everything I do. I feel like Ruler's one of those players that always has aura around him. When Ruler says something in the room, everybody listens. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And it's good to have a player like that because as much as Pays grew and could finally do interviews mostly okay, he was not that guy. He was not that guy. He was the quiet, shy, please set me up, Youngs. I'll try my best to team fight.
Yeah, he was like, I want to play League of Legends. I think Ruler now at this point of his career, I mean, even before he made the move on over to JDG, he was such the cornerstone and the franchise boy of this Samsung into KSV into GenG roster, where the relationship he had with the owner, with Arnold, like it was all there. And to now come back and kind of be slotted in and almost given that responsibility to take the pressure off of Chovy, like it's scary. Like I feel like when this team gets humming, there's nothing that's going to rattle them. And Coach Kim has consistently been one of the best drafters in the LCK. Just when we think about what happened over at Esports World Cup, and we're like, wow, these drafts are kind of weird. We're picking weird stuff early. The rumor was that, oh, he just let the players pick the draft, and then they just got boomed in the first round. Since then, Coach Kim, Coach of the Year for the LCK Awards. This is a team that has it all. With Duro joining GenG and stepping into the light and feeling pressure relieved from him, I'm sure that's how Doran feels, right? Joining T1 here, Wolf. He's joining this great team. Everything's going to be great. He had such a long off season, which is because he joined T1 while they were doing a league of their own during the whole time. So he wasn't going to go join them. They had Antara step in. He got to relax the whole time, right? Like, I'm sure it's really easy for him.
Yeah. So let's. I mean, I don't want to get. We already kind of did the like JS Doran drama a little bit last week, and
all right.
And I already tweeted about it, and I've given my thoughts many times on multiple shows, so I don't want to get too into the drama there. But what we can talk about is T1's results for the week, which is that they lost to Dplus. And you were talking about GenG having really incredible drafting with Coach Kim. I feel like they and Dplus have by far had the best drafts. Dplus's drafting, though, has been a little bit more unique in that they hold a lot of flexes. And they were able to beat T1 in part due to that, in part due to T1 underperforming a little bit, I think, on that day. But the more interesting series for Dplus was against the DN Freecs, where they had that draft where they had just this wild and wacky setup where they had the Elise support and, they had the Zillion mid, and the whole time around, we just didn't really know where these picks were going until the last possible second. We saw Showmaker play Set as well in game one to deny also that pick from Life because he plays a ton of Set in the bottom lane. Just really creative stuff coming out of Dplus that they're backing up with the gameplay. Like when you get into the game, they seem like they've been screaming this. It's not just like it seemed at first glance like, oh man, they're kind of trolling with this, but it's just so crazy it might work. But then when you see them play it, you're like, okay, they've definitely know what they're doing. Yes, Barrel is dying a lot, but he's making really good calls. Making the game finishing call to get that snipe, for example, with the Cocoon. And Dplus look like if they're drafting like this and they have this much creativity, they could upset almost any team. Like they already upset, in my opinion, T1. Some people thought like T1 was going to be a little bit rocky this week and that it's not an upset. I think it's an upset that Dplus beat them. And you expected them to beat DNF, but they did it in like such a stylish way where you're like, oh, okay, they could really actually have some cool drafts. Maybe they could beat GenG. That's kind of where I'm at right now with this team. I'm super stoked about the direction that it's moving, and Fearless Draft won't be around forever. Like it is just going to be for this tournament. Then we go to LCK. It's going to change up, but it almost gives them more depth when champions aren't banned that they can also hold all of these things in all possible games of a series, and that's really cool to me.
Yeah, Showmaker showing up with the Zillion earlier. We also got to see a Lilia out of Lucid. Was constantly crediting this coaching staff, former T1 players, Bengi and Pumandu's on that roster as well, with empowering their players to play unique champions and fully utilizing the fearless draft mode here. Because as you said, it was like Lilia, Jace, and then it was like set mid was something else that kind of rolled out here. The empowerment of players is something that I think is fully not talked about enough, because coaches are known for their drafting, and it's like, okay, cool, draft, there it is. But how does their draft translate to how much they trust their players? I feel like we've lost that art recently. It's been, okay, pick what's open. Don't make a mistake in the draft. Within those 30 seconds, and try to remember what happened last time. Remember if there's unique picks for the other side. But when your team is just drafting this wide open, and there's nothing you can do if you're DN Freecs in terms of preparation, you just have to hope that your very standard team composition is better than the unique picks that happen. It just makes it so difficult to play against.
I think when I look at the difference between GenG and Dplus, why I think it's more impressive in some ways how Dplus is drafting. Like GenG has players that are so talented. Like you have Chovy, Canyon, and Keen. That's all I have to say, right? And Ruler, okay? Yeah. That's all I have to say. And then like these players can play anything. They have played anything. They've been around for so long too. Like Ruler's been around for super long. So they've lived through so many metas. They've seen so many different things. So their champion pools are pretty massive. And you look at the Dplus roster, and like Lucid's still pretty new, right? Aiming's a little bit, like his champion pool is a little bit smaller. Like he has like a clear niche role. Showmaker has some picks that are kind of eclectic that he's good at. So it feels like the pools are still strong. Don't get me wrong. Still strong for Dplus, but it feels like they're a little bit constrained. And yet, Dplus makes drafts that are both great for their players' playstyle and strong in this meta, and they're able to do that consistently. That's what's I'm not saying that makes them better than GenG. I'm just like, it's harder for them to make good drafts as a team, in my opinion, and they keep just doing it consistently. And that's what's awesome to watch. And, when we get to see them in best of fives, let's see how, like, when these champion pools get a little bit more constrained with Fearless, if they can continue to do that. If they can, I feel like, there's some studies that people could do on this roster, and you could really start to see maybe if other weaker teams could draft like Dplus, find their players' strengths and do that consistently and not first pick Corki when, Guma has Caitlyn on the other side, then maybe there's some learning that could be done here. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So I'm hoping that people look at Dplus like as a whole, like the league looks at Dplus and goes, we could do that, right? Like we could try to emulate that. We can try to do what's good for us. That's also still strong in this meta.
Yeah. 5 unique, again, Fearless means that, you're not going to go back to back, but you could have had, you could have played 2-0-2-0 and played only 2 champions. Instead, Showmaker, 5 unique champions played. Lucid, 5 unique champions played. And even the new guy with Shiwu, 4 unique champions played. Who else? Barrel, 5 unique champions played. So just Dplus are fully leaning into this whole mantra of fearless draft and showing off the champion ocean early. And it's going to be a nightmare to plan against. All right, before we come up with our surprise teams of the LCK so far, it's time to remind you about our friends over at ExpressVPN. Now, going online without ExpressVPN is like not closing the door when you use the bathroom. Even if you have nothing to hide, why give random creeps a chance to invade your privacy? Wolf and I like to close the bathroom door when we go to the bathroom, and you should too by using our friends over at ExpressVPN, because all your traffic flows through their servers, keeping it safe. Internet service providers, including mobile network providers, know every single website you visit in the US. And in the US, ISPs are legally allowed to sell your information to advertisers. So ExpressVPN reroutes 100% of your traffic through secure encrypted servers, so your ISP can't see your browsing history here, Wolf.
Yeah. I feel like you made that so relatable for everyone, no matter like where you live, no matter like what your gender is.
Yeah.
Me and Wolf, we like to close the bathroom door. I'm like, yeah, I do that. Like I do that pretty consistently. But I like to be safe. I don't want people to be able to look in. Nobody wants that. Look, I've been using ExpressVPN for really, like, I'd say I don't know how many months it's been. It's been a long time since I started using it, but as soon as I started using it, when I compare it to other VPNs, like the interface is super sleek. It connects without any problems for me, like nonstop, no matter wherever I am. It connects instantly. Doesn't really mess with my battery too much on my phone, and I'm basically constantly able to keep it on, be safe, and access websites and services around the world no matter where I am. I play a lot of video games that are region specific, actually, so they wouldn't work in Korea, for example, or a Korean mobile game that I'm playing that doesn't work in the United States. Actually, I'm able to actually get around that and play these games wherever I am. So it's been super helpful for me. Works incredibly well. You have a huge list of locations you can choose from as well, in terms of trying to make sure if you just want to cover yourself and you're not trying to like access content, you can get a server that's super close to you, so it doesn't actually slow down your content, slow down what you're doing on your internet at all. So it's been, for me, compared to other VPN services I've used in the past, like by far the most user friendly and super fast.
It is so easy to use. Wolf has like really hammered that point home, but I don't think it can be hammered home enough. Like I have it on my phone, I have it on my PC right here. You just push the button, you're good to go. So protect your online privacy today by visiting expressvpn.com/Monte Wolf. That's expressvpn.com/Monte Wolf, and you can get yourself an extra 4 months free. expressvpn.com/Monte Wolf. Thanks to our friends over at ExpressVPN. Again, another thing that we use here on Last Free Nation daily. This is a daily use thing. I use it every day. All right. A team that we need to try and unlock, because they obviously have been using ExpressVPN, and we're not 100% sure what to make of them, are the DN Freecs here, Wolf.
Yeah, I want to talk about this team because they're, to me, so far, like what I wanted Bro and Nongshim to be with their kind of upgraded rosters, Broman and Kespa Cup. You know, like, let's be honest, we thought maybe Bro, if they continued their form, could make like the top group, the legend group, you know, but we were like, realistically though, like maybe top 6 is okay. That's the kind of realistic expectation I think most of us had for Bro. No one was going to this tournament being like, Bro's a top 3 team, Bro's a top 2 team. Not even dGon, the biggest Bro supporter, was ready to say that, but we expected a lot more from them than what we got from them this week, right? And I expected a lot more from Lehens, Kingen to Nongshim than we got this week. Whereas for DNF, I kind of had middling expectations. I thought, okay, well, this roster is, it's like, there's something about like Berserker coming back from NA that just didn't spark joy initially. Pioshik's been super inconsistent. Bulldog and Dudu are like known quantities, and I feel like, to me, I felt like they kind of hit their ceiling on their rosters. Life, also a player who, like, I've followed over the last 5 years, and I've just not been. Like, I felt like when I was casting this guy, I'm like, man, he's like a set one trick. Like, he can't do that much. His Jarvan was pretty funny, but like he's not going to be one of the top players. And he has had some risky plays he's made so far this season. But it's when you put all these players together so far, to me, and maybe it's Rapid Star's coaching that has made a huge impact early on this roster. Very different, not similar to CB Max's style at all. And you watch how they play the map, and you watch how they play these fights, and you watch how confidently Berserker plays Kalista when he has, like, his team has no range and not really great setup, and he's just so bold, and he's pushing forward, he's making these heroic plays. No one's afraid to utilize the comp the way it's supposed to be utilized. Like, no one's afraid to be like, okay, our one win con is we have to trap them here, or okay, we don't have prio, they're gonna get Otacon, we're going to hard push bottom lane, and we're either going to trade Otacon for 2 turrets, or we're going to pull them off of Otacon. They have to choose. We're being confident. We're making this decision really fast. The way they played against Dplus' wonky comp, too, was super confident. They were almost able to wrestle that game back from Dplus. I have been pleasantly surprised by this team. And we've had the Kwangdong Freecs and Afrika in the past have done this to me before. We're early on in the season. I'm like, hey, hold on.
Happened to be last split. Happened to be last split in summer.
But like the mid-season collapse angle on a really short tournament, like this one, like there's not like a mid-season, you know, there's no second round. So like maybe they just keep it together the whole time. Obviously they don't have the greatest record just yet because they've only played 2, right? And they narrowly beat Nongshim and then lost to Dplus, which Dplus is a strong team. So they're 1-1. I'm not saying like this team is going all the way, but they're getting me pretty like excited, and I'm seeing the potential for what this roster is going to be capable of when we hit regular season LCK, because they've made so many good macro decisions. Their drafts have been, I've been very like afraid of their drafts. I've been like, oh, this draft is really suspect. And then they utilize it so well that you know that they know the shortcomings of their draft and the strengths of their draft, even against their opponents who have like these extra advantage against them. They've been able to play the map sometimes so well that like, I'm like, oh, they can't win any team fights. So like, well, that's right, Wolf. That's why we're not team fighting right now. Like, we're pushing and we're doing this other stuff and we're pulling them to us and we have no range. But if we all push down bottom lane and then hide in the brushes, clear vision, they have to come to us. They can't shoot us if they can't see us. So guess what? The range doesn't matter. The Berserker goes in and stuff like this. So I'm watching this team. I'm like, wow, the shot calling on this roster looks really, really good. And that's not something that we've been able to say about the Freecs for a while. Bulldog also looks like the best he's ever been right now. This guy's known to be a grinder, got top rank in solo queue again during this offseason because that's what he does. And a lot of people gave CV Max credit for like going and like making him grind, but no, I think that's actually just who he is. He just grinds.
So I think you've hit everything. My fear is that the good shot calling requires solid discipline. And Pyosik and discipline are two things that don't necessarily go together in my head. Pyosik is the, I'm going to play very aggressive and or make a massive steal that flips the game on its head. That's not discipline like, hey, we're going to methodically choke you out of a game. And if that's what Rapid Star is coaching the team to do and kind of picking these very pointed drafts to make them learn that, the LCK Cup is the perfect place to do that, where these results don't necessarily reflect, or they don't reflect your potential ability to qualify for Worlds. And so I like that. I was waiting for you to talk about Bulldog because when I came in LCK last split, the way that you guys talked about Bulldog made it sound like a known quality or quantity, and I was like, it seems like if the ball is in his court and things are around him, he can carry. He's not necessarily, and he'll make a play or two for you, but he's not the one that will always make the play. But by now having Pyosik there, who is kind of like the aggressive playmaker, and now having Berserker there, who you've now seen is what Diablo wishes he could be and will be at some point, you have a lot of firepower on this roster if you could figure out life's champion pool and Dudu is a little bit more stable than everyone else.
Yeah.
I feel like this is a team that can push up, and this is why, going back to the format, I'm interested in who gets seeded, because if DRX and KT get the bye in the play-ins, that means DN Freecs has to play Hanwha Life for T1 in the first round of play-ins, and they're just going to get booted, and we're never going to get to see them like run deep in best of fives. But if it is based on wins, we might see T1 Hanwha Life and the Freecs work their way on up into the playoff stages where they get a ton of different reps. And that's what I think a roster like this needs, with the Freecs building around only one returning player in Bulldog, which means it's a brand new roster.
It's some of these things that I see for this roster. Like I said, the snappy decisions, some small things that like I've seen from Bulldog where, you know, in the past, he was a player who either he's like, I'm really good at this champion, usually an AD champion, and I'm very confident and I'm a hands guy there. Or he was like, I have no hands and I scale. And there was kind of like no in between. Like, he's like, I'm playing a mage, probably going to die in lane, but like, I'll do some big stuff later. I play Aurelion Soul, you know, I'll play the Hui, we'll hit the late game, I'll do some stuff there. His Talia in the past was kind of like, he's not hitting anything, he's dying.
Tristana.
But his Tristana, you're like, okay, he's confident, he's going in, this is the type of player he is. And then I saw some like depth out of him. You know, when I was watching him play against Dplus, like when he played against Showmaker's set, he went first strike, which makes sense, right? You have the ranged advantage, and you can kind of harass. And then he went for Cull, and he just kind of passively farmed. He got caught in sides a few times and like got a little bit too aggressive with trying to maximize his gold. But he was like, I know what I need to do on Corki in this situation. I need to get 2 items as fast as possible. These items, this rune is going to get me there. I'm going to play safe. I'm not going to mess it up. And I feel like that wasn't something I normally saw from him in the past. Same with his Talia play, where he was super consistent, did a bajillion damage, and almost hard carried his team back into the game against Dplus in that second one. And I'm like, I didn't see that from you before. Like, he's just got suddenly so much depth. It's still early, right? And it was a weird draft from Dplus that he was playing into with that Talia game. And so, like, there's some asterisks there, but I haven't felt like, I don't know, I feel like I'm almost like emotionally attached to this team already in week 1. because I think they're capable of doing so much. And I'm not going to lie to you guys and be like, no, this team is going to win it all or even be a top 4 team. But for this team, with the roster it has, with what we know about these players and what they haven't been able to accomplish and how many times they've fallen off the horse, for this team even to be like in consideration in my mind for like top 6, top 7 means I'm like really enamored with what they've been able to do so far. Because otherwise, to me, this team was going to be bottom 3, not even going to be even an interesting team to discuss. I really just didn't think there was going to be anything there, and it was going to take them so long to figure out their synergy. I thought maybe we'd be talking about this team in like round 3, like, oh, they're finally like kind of okay, but it's too late. No, I'm looking at this team now being like, all right, let's see what you got. Like I'm really like locked in. Like I'm excited to watch and cast this team right now.
Yeah, I mean, last shout out to the boy Berserker. Just that is North America's pride, right? And having watched him for years, to get the opportunity to come back to the LCK again. Remember, he never played in the LCK, and show off and have that opening day. He was the interview. He was the POM, as we're calling it now. No more pogs, just palms. Was like a dream start. I think there was probably not a single North American fan who wasn't proud of Berserker showing off and being like, yeah, that's our guy. And I think that is what he provides for this Freecs roster, a class and caliber that they all want to achieve as well. And Piotrek wants to get back to. So, all right. Well, that is back at the first week of the LCK Cup. So let's look forward, Wolf. Why don't we? The matches now are no longer 1s versus 1s, 2s versus 2s. You know, the first draft pick versus the second draft pick, the third draft pick. Now it's a little bit more lopsided. We've got a lot of these lopsided matches. We have a couple of good ones. The Telecom War in T1 and KT. Hanwha Life and Dplus. These are 2 teams that look really good. Those are the ones that jump out. What else jumps out at you?
I think DNF versus DRX, for the reasons I mentioned. I'm really hyped about DNF. I want to see them dismantle DRX, but also should be Teddy coming back, likely. Hopefully he's recovered, so that'll be exciting. The Telecom War right now, with kind of the wishy-washy form of these 2 teams, I still will give T1 a big edge, and I will definitely be predicting them to win. Could be interesting. And then, there's going to be some games where we're like, if you want to like watch an explosion, watch a car crash, like KT versus Bro,
yeah,
TRX
baby,
versus BFX. Those games, I'm like, if you want to see some wild and unhinged League of Legends, there's definitely a few of those. Even T1 Nongshim historically has been a little bit off the rails, especially in best of 3s. But we'll see if that one ends up living up to it. I think T1 will probably have a relatively comfortable week in week 2. But yeah, GenG versus DNF is another one that personally I'm interested in, just because I want to see if DNF can make even any dent in GenG. I wouldn't predict them, but I wonder what their game plan is going to be. So I think week 2, now that we know more about these teams, there's a lot more like storylines you can lean into, going, oh, okay, like look at Dplus's drafting, look at GenG's form, a little bit greedy, but still probably our top team. Hanwha recovering a little bit, so that matchup against Dplus is more interesting because Dplus looks so dominant with their drafting. Like it's going to be a pretty interesting week, arguably more interesting than week 1.
Yeah, not confirmed, but I feel like you can surmise maybe that the group elder teams were scrimming against group elder teams, group Baron teams were scrimming against group Baron teams, just because of like what you were saying earlier with that fluid drafting that I think Dplus and GenG had shown so far, and it just felt like everyone on the group Baron side was a little bit further behind. So 7-3 is the score for group Elder. 25 matches. Yeah, that's right. 25 matches. So if a team gets to 13, or if a group gets to 13 wins, that's when they are the winning side, and those teams will have the 3 seeds into the playoffs plus the 2 seeds into play-ins. Last little bit here, the BROwatch. For us Bro fans, I'm making the segment now. For us Bro fans, it's not looking good because we got to play GenG and KT and then close it off with Dplus. So the only hope for making it into play-ins is that BFX also drops all their games and doesn't win a single game, and then there's going to be some like weird tiebreaker between a bunch of teams that aren't very good, but the Bros are just, we're hoping that BFX lose all their games, but they still have to play DRX and Nongshim, the easier team. So it's kind of like we're on the same group, but also I hope you lose all of your matches.
Yeah, I'm not optimistic about the Bros at the moment, but I hope they can turn it around, because I really was before their first 2 matches, and before the first match more so. I've never seen hype for a team die so quickly in the LCK, honestly. Like, usually it takes like a few weeks. People are ready to trust for like, oh, like, hold on, like, it was just a bad day, we'll see. Like, for example, if GenG had that game 1 and still won, but like, or even if they lost, people wouldn't be like, oh, the hype is dead, this team is bad. Like, it takes a little while. No, the Bro hype is gone. And I mean, he literally wasn't playing, so maybe he'll be back next week, because Bull in his stead did not spark joy. So I'm not looking forward to more of the BROwatch segments for the next 2 weeks. Maybe it'll get more interesting later.
I mean, there's a world where it'll only be next week, and then we won't see it until April. All right. Those are the topics. That's everything. That is week 1 of the LCK here on the Monte and Wolf Show. Final thoughts here, Wolf, before we call it a day?
I thought you did a pretty good Monte today, and
he was great. He was great.
See, even Monte said so. Monte, voice from the void, says so. So I will say to those watching, for those in the comments, like, please continue to give your feedback, like we mentioned earlier, because we want to shape the show in the best way for you guys as it's in this transition period.
Yeah. Also, again, we'll be diving into some of the Korean content as well that is being pushed out by a lot of the very passionate, we'll call it passionate fans of these LCK teams. The links will be there for the GenG content that I saw, and I saw some like T1 content around Doran understanding his job and all the different T1 players having like Hyungs and stuff like that. Anyways, we'll have that one there for you as we dive deeper into the Korean fandom and start unlocking it and unpacking it a little bit, and why we always have to bring it up every now and then. All right, everyone. Thank you so much for watching the Monte and Wolf Show. Like and subscribe here at Last Free Nation for all your esports and nerd culture content. We'll see you next week for more Monte and Wolf.